to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another video. And of course, normally I do New York Giants content. I'm going to start to be putting some more broad NFL content on the page along with, a ton of Giants videos. But in this video, I wanted to talk about the 2019 Patriots, who are off to an historic start, and whether or not at season end, this team will be potentially the greatest team in the history of football for a single season. And now, before you laugh, this team is off to an 8-0 start, and of course, we all know there are only two teams in the history of the sport who have had undefeated regular seasons. That being the 2007 Patriots and the 1972 Miami Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins did it over a 14-game schedule, and then they went on to win the Super Bowl, being the only team ever, when you include the postseason, to go without a loss for an entire year. The 2007 Patriots are the only team ever to go undefeated in a 16-game schedule, but of course lost in the Super Bowl to the New York Giants, finishing 18-1. This New England Patriots team seems destined to at least have an opportunity to potentially be the first team ever to go 19-0. Now, of course, a lot of people will point at their schedule. In their first 8 games, they have not played world beaters. They played the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are not very good. They played Miami, who's a dumpster fire. They played the Jets, who have 1 win. They played Buffalo, who played them pretty tough. They only won by 6 points in Buffalo. That was their closest scare of the year so far. They played the Redskins, who are awful, the Giants, who are bad, the Jets again, and Cleveland. None of those teams are very good, but they have blown them all to smithereens. And no team, regardless of opponents, over an 8-game schedule, has beaten teams in the demeanor in which they have up to this point in the year. And I'm going to get into all the statistics in a second. But before I do, I wanted to take a look at the Patriots' remaining schedule, which is about to get a lot more challenging. Their most challenging game of the year is no doubt this week at Baltimore, at least up to this point in the season. And their next 5 games, I think, are games in which they could be presented with a challenge. At Baltimore, they then have a bye. Then they go to Philadelphia, Dallas at home, at the Houston Texans, who are kind of hit or miss, but when they hit, they are a very talented football team, and home against Kansas City. And at that point, Patrick Mahomes is probably back. Then they got Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Miami. Games they should win, especially being that the Buffalo game is at home. If they get through these 5 games, I think this team does go 16-0, and I do not see a formidable threat in the conference to at least prevent them from getting to the Super Bowl. Now, of course, the Saints, the Packers, the Niners all look very strong and maybe could pose a threat in the Super Bowl. If they get past this Baltimore game, I see them beating Philadelphia with an extra week to prepare. Dallas at home, they should not have much of a problem. At Houston could be a challenge. And Kansas City, I don't see it being much of a problem, even with Patrick Mahomes, with it being in New England. So of those 5 games, I think the 2 most likely games they could lose would be at Houston and at Baltimore this week. So we'll have to wait and see how they do this week. But nevertheless, this team is 8-0. They've gotten out to a ridiculous start when you look at the numbers. The all-time leader in sacks for a year is 72 by the Chicago Bears in 1984. Now, the New England Patriots aren't quite on pace to break that. However, they are on pace to have about 62 if you multiply their sacks by 2. But records that they're on pace to crush are points against. This defense has been otherworldly. Normally, when you think about the Patriots, you think about Bill Belichick, you think about Tom Brady, as well you should. Those two are phenomenal. But Bill Belichick, a lot of people don't realize, is a phenomenal defensive mind. And when you look at this defense, outside of Gilmore, they don't have a lot of household names. Van Noy's having a great year. Obviously, some of the rookies they brought in have been playing great. But they're getting after the quarterback, they're creating turnovers, and they're not turning the football over. And the scariest part is this offense has not hit on all cylinders. But this defense, over their first 8 games, has only surrendered 61 points. If you multiply that by 2, if they're able to, duplicate that in the second half, they will have surrendered 122 points. The all-time record is 165 by the Baltimore Ravens. They are on pace to shatter that by 43 points. That's like 25% less than the all-time record. That's how good this defense has performed over the first half of the season. And when you couple that defense with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, they're nearly impossible to beat. They've only surrendered 7 red zone trips. Trips in their first 8 games. It seems like the Giants surrendered 7 red zone trips nearly every game. And in those red zone trips, they've only surrendered 1 red zone touchdown. So when teams have entered the red zone, gotten from the 20-yard line to the goal line, they've only given up a touchdown once in their first 8 contests. And of their 61 points, 1 came on a pick 6 by the backup quarterback. The other one came on a blocked punt. So 2 of those touchdowns, 14 of those points, were not even surrendered by the defense. It is scary how good this team has played. And then you look at the plus minus. Through 8 games, this team has a plus minus of 189. Now, do I expect them to duplicate over the last 8? Probably not, because it's a much harder schedule. But the all-time record for point differential in the history of football is 292 by the 1942 Bears. And since the merger, the record is 284 by the greatest show on turf, the 1999 Rams. They are on pace to have nearly a plus 400. They're on pace for a plus 88, I think it is. I mean, that is 378. And that is crazy. That's nearly 100 points more than the plus 292. So they're on pace to crush records. And I think it's at least a 40 to 50% chance this team goes undefeated for the regular season. And if they could carry it out through the postseason, I don't think anybody could deny it. This would be the greatest team in the history of the sport. So that is a storyline to look out for over the remainder of this season. Their detractors will say they haven't played anybody yet. And that is true. Buffalo's the best team they've played. And how good is Buffalo? They just got smacked by the Philadelphia Eagles. But if they get past these 5 games, you can't really argue with that schedule. Baltimore is the favorite to win the North. Dallas or the Eagles, one of those teams is winning the East. Houston is probably the favorite to win the South. And Kansas City is the favorite to win the West. So they're playing, teams that are favorite to win their divisions. 3 of those games are on the road. So there's, if they get past those 5 games and win in convincing fashion, this may very well be the greatest team in the history of the sport as they're trying to accomplish what they couldn't quite do in the 2007 regular season. We're going to have to wait and see how it all plays out. But as always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.